What's up guys, I'm CandidCrandell and today I'm going to be talking about Pretty Little Liars Season 5 Episode 6, Run, Allie, Run. You know the drill. If you haven't seen the episode and you don't want me to spoil anything for you, pause this video right now and come back later. The episode begins right where the 100th episode left off, with the explosion of Toby's house and the girls all receiving a text at the same time. We were right, it was definitely an A text. Is there any other kind of group message these days? I don't think so. The text says, "Did you miss me, bitches? A." A is back and they've brought that sassy attitude as well. I definitely missed that. Toby's house has completely blown up. Even if they can't charge A with stalking Alison, at this point, can't we get him for arson? No one was inside of the Kavanaugh house when the explosion happened, thank goodness. Toby's dad did break his leg trying to avoid a falling tree, however. Jenna was not inside, so good for her, because that girl has been trapped in so many burning buildings. I kind of hoped that she wasn't in this one. Spencer says, "I think A took a nap and woke up tonight." The big question is, why did A resurface now? A's modus operandi has always been to make the girls feel paranoid, so I think that part of the game may have been to let them think that they had won. Let them think that Shauna was A. Let them think that they were safe. Like that one time when Mona got arrested, they think A's gone. They're sleeping with their doors unlocked and their windows open. Don't they know that's what we want? Caleb points out that A doesn't shoot and miss. There had to be a reason. All of the girls and Alison were just 3 houses down when the explosion happened at Toby's. So if A had been trying to kill Alison or the girls, they would have done it. It was not a mistake that they hit Toby's house. My theory is that because the explosion at Toby's house happened moments after the Rosewood Police Department announced that Bethany Young was the person in Alison's grave, because the discovery is going to be explosive for Toby's family. I think that Bethany Young had something to do with Toby's mom's death. I don't necessarily think she's responsible, but I think she knew about what happened. A blowing up Toby's house was the physical representation of the bomb that was finding out that Bethany Young was the one in Alison's grave. I think it's a major break in what has been going on in the underbelly of Rosewood. I sincerely have never thought that the NAT Club's only reason for existing was to try and spy on teenage girls. I think that they were also looking into probably a lot of the adults in Rosewood and looking into what they were doing and using it as blackmail against them. The newspaper is saying that the explosion at Toby's house was caused by a natural gas leak. This is kind of sketching me out because I honestly want to believe that Rosewood PD is not this bad at their jobs. The only way that so many cases could get misinterpreted and A could just get away with things so many times is if someone on the A team, or maybe even A themselves, is inside the Rosewood PD. We talk about how bumbling the Rosewood PD is all the time, but maybe they're not bumbling at all. Maybe they're being completely led astray by one of their own. My first guess obviously would have been Wilden, because he was creepy as all get out, but you've got to wonder that if something was going on within Rosewood PD, maybe Wilden caught wind of it, that was why he was killed. Same thing goes for Garrett. So who could it be? I'm hoping for Officer Barry. That would be a twist. I feel like there's got to be someone that is at the very least on the A team working within Rosewood Police Department, because there's no other way that they could get this many things wrong. Caleb says to Hannah that he's not sure that he'll be staying in Rosewood very long, that he thinks he's going to go spend some time in Montecito. I think that's an awful idea, and I think that Caleb needs to stay because he just got back and we're probably gonna need his hacking skills. The girls are all finally realizing that Shauna wasn't A, or at the very least Shauna wasn't Big A. I think that all of us that were watching the show kind of knew that, especially considering the fact that it got renewed for 2 more seasons. But I think the girls definitely thought that Shauna was A, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of A's plan. I don't doubt that Shauna had something to do with the A game in some capacity, but there's no way that she was Big A. She came in too late for that. It has to be someone who's been around from the beginning. Ezra is looking for a connection between Jessica De Laurentiis and Bethany Young. He points out that Jessica was on the board at Radley and Bethany was a patient there, so there's probably some connection somewhere. As has been stated in the past, all roads lead back to Radley, and I think that that is definitely the case here. It's weird that Jessica De Laurentiis would be on the board at Radley if she didn't have some kind of personal investment in doing so. She was there to maintain some kind of control or to keep an eye on someone. The question is, who was it and why? Ezra says that when he was interviewing people for his book at Radley, he feels like Bethany Young's name came up, he just can't remember where. Spencer is back at her house grabbing a few things and Peter Hastings comes into her room all creepy, and he needs to stop creeping around if he wants anyone to take him seriously and like actually listen to what he's saying. Knock on the door, announce your presence, don't just come up behind me when mom just pulled me out of the house a couple days ago to get away from you without you knowing. Peter Hastings asks Spencer what's going on and Spencer's like, you're gonna need to talk to mom about that, and Peter says that Veronica won't take his calls. I mean, can you blame the woman, really? Spencer tells her dad that she thinks that he killed Mrs. De Laurentiis, and he seems genuinely shocked that Spencer would think that he would take a life. Of course he was trying to protect her, but he would never ever kill someone to do that. Spencer seems to believe him because no one wants to think that their father is a murderer. Peter says to Spencer that he and Melissa were at the lake talking the night that Jessica De Laurentiis was killed. Why do they feel the need to go all the way out there? And also, is it the same lake that Wilden was killed at? Perhaps Melissa was the one to kill Wilden and not Cece? Ezra calls Aria to check in on her while she is with Spencer, and Spencer totally gives her a look when she says that it's Ezra calling. Rightfully so, because just a few short weeks ago, Aria was in a major depression over the fact that her boyfriend had been stalking her and her friends to write a book. Aria admits that she and Ezra may have had a slip. Okay, 2 slips. Oops. Spencer doesn't seem too happy with Aria about that. She's like, a few short weeks ago, you were like never wanting to see him again, telling him to leave Rosewood. Aria shouldn't necessarily be sleeping with Ezra at this point. Like, I get that he is familiar and comfortable and that they've been there before, but if they're going to actually start a relationship, I think that they probably do need to take things very slowly. It was probably not wise of Aria to just hook up with Ezra like that. As much as I enjoyed watching that, I don't think it was necessarily the right thing for her to do in that situation. A sends Allie a video of her mother being buried. Ugh, creepy. As if that's not creepy enough, there's a message attached that says, I buried your mom the same way I watched her bury you, A. A basically just admitted to Alison that they killed her mom and that they were there when Mrs. D was burying Alison alive. So does that mean that A was the person who hit Allie over the head with the rock? What's interesting about this video though is that it says to me that there were 2 people present when Mrs. De Laurentiis was being buried, because you can't shovel dirt onto a grave and be holding a camera at the same time. Does that mean that there are 2 A's, or does that just mean that A enlisted someone else to help them bury Mrs. De Laurentiis? I'm also curious as to who Mrs. De Laurentiis was on the phone with when she was burying Alison, because that means that she was talking to someone about the person who had just hit Alison over the head with the rock. So when she was saying, what have you done? It's possible that she was talking to someone who wasn't the person who hit Alison. The girls all try to figure out who would have wanted to kill Alison's mother and bury her. Aria mentions that it might be someone that they haven't even considered. I think that's an important clue. It's probably someone that we have encountered in passing, probably at some point, and when we find out who it is, we're all gonna be like, oh my god. Right now, I think it's someone that is not at the forefront of people's investigation. The reason that A has been able to survive for so long and keep doing what they're doing is because they're never who we expect it to be. People get accused all the time, and A is taking all these people down, and they're still able to do everything they want to do and not get caught. Allie says that the only reason she came back to Rosewood is because she thought that A was dead. I'm hesitant to believe that, because if Allie really thought that A was dead, I think she wouldn't have been so jumpy those first couple days when she was back. Allie says to the girls that she wants to leave Rosewood. She's feeling like she needs to run again. Spencer points out, even if you could run, where would you hide? Now Alison's face has been in the news again as the girl that was presumed dead but then came back and said that she was kidnapped and held hostage. So if someone were to see her, even in a completely different portion of the United States, they would probably recognize her and make a phone call. Spencer goes on a visit to Radley to see Eddie Lamb, and she sees Lieutenant Tanner there. She has been talking to someone and saying that she's disappointed in how much they've been willing to cooperate. It looks like it's a doctor or someone who's on staff at Radley. Presumably she's there talking to them about Bethany Young, seeing as how they just figured out that it was her remains and the last place she was seen was Radley. So it makes sense that she would be there. But it's interesting that no one at Radley is willing to cooperate with the police. Spencer says to Eddie, "I don't think it was a coincidence that Bethany was buried in Mrs. DeLaurentis' backyard, do you?" And Eddie says, "Probably not," which is code for, no, there's definitely a reason, but I can't say anything because there's cameras on me and someone is watching me. Eddie says that he can't talk about Bethany to cops, reporters, or to Spencer. Spencer seems kind of disappointed. I think she was expecting for Eddie to be able to give her some answers, but I think it was a little naive of her to think that she could just like walk into Radley and have an open conversation with him in the lobby about something this delicate. It seems like Eddie totally knows something though, because he keeps saying, if I did know anything about Bethany, I wouldn't be able to say anything. Eddie receives a phone call and has to leave Spencer. I'm curious as to who that person is. After Eddie leaves, Spencer looks up and notices a security camera, and we see her on the security cam footage. Perhaps Eddie's phone call was from someone who was watching those security tapes and didn't quite like where the conversation with Spencer was going. Hannah totally spaces out on a date with Travis and has to cancel on him. I don't necessarily think that Hannah and Travis are going to survive. Again, this is a situation where when the girls are trying to have relationships with someone that they have to keep secrets from, it just never ends up working out. When Hannah comes back inside from talking to Travis, Allie is on the phone with someone saying, "Just get there, okay?" Hannah asks who she was on the phone with, and Allie's like, "Oh, it's not important." It's kind of important, Allie. Someone blew up Toby's house. A is clearly back. Who you're on the phone with and talking to in hushed tones, kind of maybe your friend's business. Allie says to Hannah that she is going to be leaving Rosewood, and she asks her not to tell the girls about it and not to try to stop her. That's a pretty big request to make. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna skip town. I need you to lie to the 3 other people who have your back right now about me leaving, who are probably gonna be pretty mad at you if they know that you knew that I left. That's not cool. Hannah offers to help Alison leave Rosewood. Why? I think we're all very aware that Hannah's had a massive identity crisis since Allie came back. Say that it's for selfish reasons all you want, but I think that Hannah is the first of the girls to openly admit that their life would be easier without Alison there. Aria talks to Ezra about their little hookup the other night, and Ezra's like, "Yeah, I know, it felt right." And then Aria tells him that she thinks that it was a mistake. I hate that she said that because I feel really bad for Ezra, but I kind of agree with her. It's complicated. She says to Ezra that she does miss them being together, but she's not sure that it can be the way that it was before. Ezra says that he wishes that he could go back and change things, and Aria points out that he can't. He can't change the fact that when he approached her in the bar, he knew who she was. He can't change the fact that he was spying on her and her friends in order to write a book. He did those things, and even if they were for the right reasons, so to speak, it's not going to be that easy for Aria to forgive him. I think she probably will eventually, but I don't think it's going to be as instantaneous as I think Ezra hoped it would be. Lieutenant Tanner comes to Ezra's apartment. Ugh, I really wish that Ezra would get like a peephole installed on his door so that he is like able to look out and see who it is without having to actually open the door. For someone who still has security cameras in the hallway, you think he'd be able to rig up something so that he could like see who is at his door and assess whether or not he wanted to open it. Oh, I'm so freaked out though because Aria is inside the apartment and that is still not okay in the eyes of the police. But Aria is smart and goes to hide in the bathroom. Good girl. I was having a panic attack right there, I'm not gonna lie to you. Lieutenant Tanner hands Ezra a manila envelope that was addressed to him sitting outside his door. He takes it and doesn't look at it, and I think it's very wise that he doesn't open it because I think he knows that it could very well be from A and it could have something that he doesn't want Lieutenant Tanner to see in it. He also uses the envelope to cover up a picture of him and Aria that happens to be sitting out. Good boy. Lieutenant Tanner has some questions for Ezra about Shauna. He's like, you know, she wasn't really my student. really know her that well, so when she showed up dead in my family's theater, it was just like a real shock to us. She's like, you know, we discovered some gunshot residue on Shauna's sweatshirt. You were shot the night before Shauna died, right? Do you remember anything about your mugger? And he's like, nothing other than what I've already told the police. He seems to be very good about keeping his story straight. I appreciate that, but it also sketches me out a little bit. Basically, what it seems like Tanner was reaching for is that she thinks that perhaps Shauna was the one who shot Ezra. I think she's going to figure out that if Ezra was there, the girls were there. And she wants to know why all of them were there. As Lieutenant Tanner is leaving, we notice that Aria left her purse and her jacket on the table in the kitchen in Ezra's apartment, and she totally sees it. Ugh. If Aria is smart, she will throw away that purse and never use it ever again. Because if Lieutenant Tanner sees her walking around town with that leopard print purse and recognizes it, shit's gonna hit the fan. Emily asks Paige to tell her who's working with Mona. She's concerned after Toby's house just blew up, and she's like, look, if you knew who was behind this and you could tell me and it would prevent Alison from getting seriously hurt and you didn't tell me, wouldn't you feel bad? Paige is like, I don't know that I can do that, especially with how she treated Mona, referring to the video of Allie slapping Mona. Emily points out that that video was clearly altered by Mona. Paige agrees, but says Mona didn't make her say those things, Mona didn't make her slap her, which is also a very good point. Whether or not that video was made to make Allie look bad, the words still came out of her mouth and her hand still hit Mona in the face. Allie can be as pissed at Mona as she wants to about the fact that she altered it to make it look like Allie just went after her, but she still did those things, so it's not like she altered it too much. Spencer wants her mom to talk to her dad, and her mom is like, I really honestly do not want to talk to him, and Spencer's like, well, that's kind of bad because I invited him to dinner. So at the very least, Veronica is willing to civilly have dinner with Peter because it's in public and she probably doesn't want to make a scene. Allie gets off the phone with Noel, or so she says, and says that he's going to pick her up at Princeton Station. I just want to know where Noel Kahn is and why no one cares that he's not going to school or not at home. Where are his parents? Where are everyone's parents? I feel like that's what we're gonna find out at the end, that everyone who was on the A-team just killed their parents and they've been living as this like cult without parents for years in Mona's house, right? No, I'm just kidding. We know that Mona's mom is around and we're gonna get to meet her. Hannah offers to drive Allie to the train station and gives her a bunch of her clothes to take with her. Hannah is seeming pretty eager to help Alison get out of Rosewood. And Allie says that she wants to see her dad before she leaves town and that she also needs to run by her house to grab a few things. I feel like this is stupid, bad idea. After Lieutenant Tanner leaves, Aria is freaking out and saying to Ezra that they need to get all of his files out of his apartment ASAP. I agree with her, they do need to move them, but they probably shouldn't be moving them immediately in case Lieutenant Tanner is just parked down the block somewhere watching. He says that he can move it to his storage unit, and Aria's like, no, that has your name on it, they'll just be able to check there too. And then she offers to let him hide all of his files in her attic because her dad is out of town. Aria, that is just dumb. Having Ezra's files in your house ties you two together and then makes you look like you're working together. Not good. Ezra opens the envelope that was delivered to his door. Inside there is a drawing done by Bethany Young, and it seems to be Mrs. De Laurentiis wearing a scarf watering her roses in the garden. To her right there is a demon holding a spear. For whatever reason, Bethany is not a big fan of Mrs. De Laurentiis, but for not being a big fan of her, she certainly seems to know a lot about her, like what her house looks like and the fact that she likes roses and that she wears scarves. Ezra and Aria try to figure out who could have brought the envelope with the picture to him, and Aria says that her bets are on A, and Ezra's like, oh, you know what? I still have my security cameras out in the hallway, so I can just check the footage. Says it like it's nothing, when really it's kind of creepy that he still has the cameras up. Paige gives Emily names, Lucas and Melissa. I think that it's pretty dangerous that she named names. Emily and Hannah get into a fight over Hannah helping Allie leave Rosewood. Emily points out the reason that Hannah probably wants Allie gone is so that she can go back to being how she was. I don't think that this is Allie intentionally trying to cause a rift between the girls, but this is something that used to happen back before Alison disappeared. She would use their secrets to kind of turn them against one another. Paige finds a dead rat in her locker and screams bloody murder, rightfully freaking so, I lived in New York for 3 years, and if I found a rat dead or alive anywhere, I probably would have screamed and then passed out. Clearly someone put that in Paige's locker because she ratted out Lucas and Melissa. Did Mona put that in there? Did Melissa? Did Lucas? Did somebody else? Maybe it was Sydney. She's on the swim team, right? She would have had access to Paige's locker. Allie goes to her house to grab a few things before she leaves, and I'm kind of mad at her for being in her house alone. After all she's been through, you would think that this girl would realize that being in her house by herself is probably not the best idea. Allie's dad isn't home, which I find kind of strange for a man whose daughter was supposedly kidnapped and held hostage for 2 years. Like, don't you think he'd be trying to like work from home at the very least so that he could like be around for her? Allie goes upstairs to grab her things, and someone in a black hoodie is in her house. I don't know if it's A or one of the A team members. I feel like the police are doing a terrible job of keeping surveillance on her house and protecting her in any way. Allie still has a stash of money hidden in her room. I'm not sure how long it's been there. And she also has 2 driver's licenses, one for New York and one for Pennsylvania. The name on the New York ID is Marnie Winter, and the name on the Pennsylvania ID is Rebecca Kelly. Allie goes downstairs, it's dark, and the person in the black hoodie hits Allie in the back with a golf club. This is interesting because this totally would have been their opportunity to hit Allie over the head and finish her for good if they really wanted to, but they don't. Instead, they hit her in the back, cause her to fall down, step on her, and start choking her with her scarf. Luckily, Emily shows up just in time to rescue Allie from the person in the black hoodie. She rushes at them and takes a book and takes a couple swings. Unfortunately, the person in the black hoodie gets away, but both Emily and Allie end up being okay. Emily wants to call the police, which is a pretty natural reaction. Allie seems pretty against the idea of calling the police and also doesn't want her dad to know either. I thought that that was kind of weird that for someone who almost died that she still doesn't want to tell anyone about it. That's kind of what got her into this whole situation in the first place, is that someone started sending her threats and she didn't go to anyone about it. There's a reason why Allie doesn't want to go to the cops and doesn't want her dad to know. Hannah goes to talk to Caleb, and Caleb says that he understands why Hannah would want Alison to leave Rosewood. He says that Hannah never liked who she was when she was around Alison. Hannah admits that there's still very much a part of her that wants Alison gone. And I think that that was a really great, genuine moment for Hannah where she's realizing this person who I've been associated with and seen as a friend of for so many years is someone that if they'd stayed around, I don't think I would have been friends with anymore. If Allie hadn't disappeared, I think that most of the girls probably would have ended their friendships with her. They just would have found new friends and new interests like they did when she disappeared. I think that Allie's coming back to Rosewood has made all the girls feel like they have to play a role and be the people that they were when they were friends with Allie again, because now she's back and that's just what people expect of them. And it's a really interesting dynamic to watch them navigate. Caleb won't talk to Hannah about what happened in Ravenswood, and Hannah says to him that she hopes that he stays in Rosewood. Aww, I really want Caleb to get back together. I like Travis, but I am team Caleb. Because Caleb knows about A. He gets it, and Hannah doesn't have to pretend to be someone that she's not with Caleb, ever. I do think that Hannah is kind of developing a little bit of a drinking problem though, and I'm kind of concerned for her. Arya says to Ezra that maybe he should tell Lieutenant Tanner the truth about Shauna being the one to shoot him. Ezra points out that if he did that, he would have to tell about a whole slew of other things. Ezra is so involved in all of this that there's really no way that he's going to be able to be honest about anything without facing some kind of jail time. The only thing that could potentially save him is if him and Arya got married, because legally then they couldn't be like pressing charges against him for anything. I think it's a little too soon for that, but I'll probably still support it. Not this soon, but eventually, sometime in the next 2 seasons, maybe. Ezria is holding hands, and even though Arya said that she thought it was a mistake that they hooked up, I still think that she can't hold out for long. Ezra and Arya see on the camera that Eddie Lamb was the one to drop off the envelope. The big question is, why would Eddie bring that to Ezra's apartment, and how does Eddie know where Ezra lives? Ezra mentions that he interviewed Eddie for his book when he was at Radley. Arya is curious as to why Eddie Lamb would have brought the envelope to Ezra when Spencer was just at Radley asking him questions like why wouldn't he have just given her that drawing there. And I think it's because Eddie knew that he was being watched at Radley. It seems like Eddie Lamb trusts Ezra and that he's trying to send him the message of there is something to look into at Radley. I'm curious as to why Eddie was a source for Ezra though, and why Ezra even ended up at Radley for writing his book. When we found out that Mona was A and she went away to Radley, is that what led Ezra to Radley, or was it something else that led him there first? Was he already looking into the cover-up of Marion Kavanaugh's death? Arya thinks that Spencer should be the one to go back into Radley to investigate, and Spencer points out that she's already been committed, she can't really go in. But Spencer says she thinks she has a way for them to get in. Allie receives a text from A that says, "See how easy it is for me to kill you? If you leave Rosewood, I will." This text would suggest to me that Mona is not A, because Mona has been very vocal with Alison about the fact that she wants her to leave Rosewood, and she's probably not working for that A either because they don't have the same end goal. Spencer points out what's worse than death. A is forcing Alison to stay in Rosewood so that she can live, but she's not really living when she's in Rosewood. She's living in fear and paranoia and constantly looking over her shoulder, and I think that's what A wants. Who would have a motive to want Alison to suffer like that? Probably someone who Alison made feel a similar way. Byron Montgomery, when she found out about his affair with Meredith, or even Meredith herself. Veronica may have felt that way towards Alison. She'd always been very vocal about not liking Alison. Allie thanks Emily for helping her when the hooded figure was attacking her. She says that most people run away from danger, but instead Emily ran right towards it. And Allie says to Emily that she doesn't want to be alone tonight and asks if she can stay over. Emily agrees. Allie's like, "We'll just sleep." Emily stays up all night watching Allie sleep and making sure that she's okay. It's very clear that Emily still very much loves Alison. Veronica is reading about Bethany Young on her iPad. Yes, that's the girl that was found in the neighbor's backyard, and I'm sure that it's interesting, but I'm curious if she's reading that for another reason, especially considering the fact that she closes her tablet when Spencer walks up. Veronica and Spencer are going to be checking out of the hotel and moving back into their house, but Peter Hastings is going to be moving out. Veronica says to Spencer, "Honey, leaving your dad isn't about one lie, it's about years of them." Spencer wants her mom to give her dad another chance, and she says that she can't because she's given him too many chances already. I'm curious as to what those second chances were for. Hannah talks to Travis, and Travis basically says to her, like, "Look, it seems like you've got a lot going on. I'll give you one less thing to worry about." Arya decides to volunteer at Radley. Yes, I am really happy that Arya is going to be the one going in there, although I'm nervous for her, especially because it's still so soon after Shauna's death and it seems like she's still pretty shaken up about that. I'm hoping that this isn't too much for her too soon. If they were going to send anyone into Radley to do some recon, it probably should have been Emily, because I think that Emily is the only one of the girls who hasn't been inside Radley ever. Spencer was committed, Hannah went to visit Mona, and Arya also went to visit Mona when she was in there. Lieutenant Tanner drops by Allie's house looking for Mr. De Laurentiis, and Allie says that she just missed him. Lieutenant Tanner says that she would like Alison and her dad to come down to the police station sometime so that Alison can answer some questions about her childhood friend, Shauna Fring. Tanner has already figured out the connection between Shauna and Alison and knows that they were friends back in Georgia. Uh-oh. I think Lieutenant Tanner is the only competent police officer involved in this whole investigation, and I'm happy that someone is figuring some stuff out, because maybe that means we'll get some answers too. Tanner's like, "Yeah, I was just curious about, you know, where you were the night of Shauna's murder." "Oh, I was in Philly with the girls." "Yeah, but like where in Philly?" You know, that kind of thing. So I think this may be a hint that the person who is going to have to face a lie detector test in the summer finale could be Alison. It would not surprise me if the police were bringing her in to question her about Shauna and to question her about her story about being kidnapped. And I think that even Alison De Laurentiis is going to struggle to beat the lie detector. Allie receives a text from A that says, "Time for the caged bird to sing." I'm not sure if this text is referring to Tippy, the parrot that A captured a while ago, or I've been reading some things online that this may be a reference to Maya being alive, which is what I really am hoping for, because I don't think Maya's dead. In the book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, the main character's name is Maya. At the end of the episode, we see someone in black gloves writing writing "My deepest condolences," using capital T's, on a card for the parents of Bethany Young. It's interesting because on the sympathy card, there's a bird sitting in a tree. Curious as to what type of bird that is. Is it a wren? When the camera pans out, we see that the person writing the note is wearing the black dress and the black veil from Wilden's funeral. We can't really tell who it is and whether it's a guy or a girl in there, honestly. It doesn't look like a very feminine figure, but it really could be anyone at this point. It's probably the same person that was in the apartment at the end of the previous episode because we saw that they had the dress and the veil in there. My theory on Bethany Young. I think that Bethany Young is probably Jason's twin. She was 17 the night that Alison disappeared, which would place her around Jason's age. She was not the person that killed Marion Cavanaugh. She saw who did. Either Jessica De Laurentiis herself, Peter Hastings, or Veronica Hastings. Bethany drew a picture of a demon carrying someone in pants and a shirt on what looks like the roof of Radley. Behind the demon is a woman wearing a dress who seems to be running after them. The next picture that Bethany drew of a woman in a dress falling off of a roof. I think what's happening here is that the woman in the dress is supposed to be Marion Cavanaugh. What I'm wondering is if Bethany was the one who was going to be thrown off the roof, Marion saw, and the person who was trying to kill Bethany killed Marion instead to keep her quiet. The reason that someone would have been trying to kill Bethany, if it was Jessica, she could have been trying to cover up her existence. If it was Peter, he could have been doing it for the exact same reason, not wanting his family to know, which would also explain why he said that Radley had ruined his family. Or it could be Veronica. If Veronica knew that Peter Hastings had Jason, she probably knew if there was a twin too. And so she may have gotten rid of that twin in hopes of at least cleaning up some of what was going on. She could maybe trust Jason not to say anything, but there was no way to control a girl that was locked up in Radley Sanitarium from speaking. Marion Cavanaugh tried to save Bethany and did end up saving her and losing her life in the process. That would also place Bethany on the roof after Marion Cavanaugh fell off. So Bethany could have been the disturbed patient that was blamed for Marion Cavanaugh's fall. They've ruled Marion's death a suicide so that if someone ever went digging and found that it had been covered up, they would just see that it looked like they were covering for a disturbed patient. When in reality, the big cover-up is that Peter or Veronica Hastings or Jessica De Laurentiis was the one who killed Marion Cavanaugh, pinned it on Bethany, and then further covered it up as a suicide. If that was what happened and A knew about that, it would also explain why they thought that potentially it was Alison in the grave, because if Bethany is Jessica De Laurentiis' daughter and Jason's twin, then she would share some DNA with Allie. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of this week's episode. If you have any theories, I would love to discuss them with you. If you don't already, you can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Blogspot, and Instagram, username CandidCrandell. You can also chat with me live during new Pretty Little Liars episodes every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Beamly, link down in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again on Tuesday. Bye!